Alright, so if you already saw my video yesterday, you would have heard me mention this. Something interesting is going on with the PvP and competitive balance within the game that I really think is worth having a look at. There was a blog post released just a few days ago and a couple of forum posts that followed up on it. I really think you guys should check out. Basically, it talks about all the power creep that's come in over the years, a long-term plan to start refining things down, and some prospects at short-term early balance to refine some stuff away. Essentially, as far as I can tell, an old PvP player has now become a balance dev and has lots of big ideas and is looking for big ideas from the community too. So I want to run you guys through this, see how optimistic we can feel about it, and maybe even offer some preliminary balance feedback and ideas ourselves as we go through. So it all kicked off with this blog post here, an update from the systems team. Hi everyone, today we want to talk about some team changes, our plans for balance going forward, as well as some goals and expectations for the coming year. So let's get started. System teams update. Let's welcome Cal CMC Cohen as the new systems team competitive designer. Now, this is actually a name I recognize from when I used to PvP way back around near Vanilla and a little bit later. This was particularly prominent Dagger Ellie, who, as we see now, is a new systems team competitive designer. Some of you know him from his work on competitive content in QA, or even as a player. Cal has developed a great aptitude for competitive balance and systems, making him a new addition to the overall team. Now, I never really played with the guy or spoke to the guy. I don't really know what he's like or how competent he is, but I guess we'll see. I mean, it's quite exciting to see that someone so ingrained in the scene has taken up in a prominent role here. Ben will transition to a new role as design manager for Guild Wars 2. We always think of him as part of our team, but we look forward to see his continued success in his new role. So, skills and balance. Balance is important to the entire game. In the past, we've split skill changes between the three core modes: PvP, PvE, and World vs. World. Previously, skill designers oversaw all balance changes, with sign-off from designers working on competitive content. So basically, you had one set of guys working on everything, and then the competitive guys would just either nod at it or not, right? PvE balance will remain in the hands of the skill designers, but the PvP and World vs. World balance will now be handled by competitive designers. So the guys making the skills and the flavor and the animations and all that kind of stuff kind of still have the inception, but there's a dedicated team for the competitive design at the outset, I guess now. This gives our competitive-focused team members a bit more control over how players interact with their content, and it will allow the skill designers to focus on PvE balance and other systems work. So balance changes for the different game modes are type of content we feel comfortable discussing with the community before release. As a team, we want to increase our presence on the forums. We want to be more open about upcoming changes to get quick feedback, early. In the future, we'll also begin calling out specific times when some of us will be present on the forums to collect feedback through targeted threads. We've had stuff like this before, and then it's only lasted a little while, and then it's gone away. Let's see how long this one goes. I'm a bit cynical that they'll keep it up, honestly, but we'll see. Ultimately, we want to be more open and available to the community, and we ask that in return you help provide constructive feedback and respectful discussion. Well, good luck with that. It is the forum community. I mean, just the Guild Wars community in general, let's be real. But I do think this sounds pretty good. We have kind of already see they begin doing this. We've had preview balance for the past, half a year now, maybe even more. So let's recap. There are some changes to the system team. Skill designers will continue to own balance changes for PvE, but competitive designers will now balance changes for PvP and World vs. World. It's almost crazy to see this written out here, just that blatant admission that they weren't doing particularly targeted, dedicated PvP balance until here, and that makes me a bit sad to realize, but there you go. I mean, many of us could kind of tell anyway. So they say we'll talk to you soon. This is overall sounding okay, but really there's not too much substance in the blog post. It's after the blog post came out when Cal went specifically to the forums and opened a bunch of threads there that we started to get some more meaty, juicy information. And in fact, the fruits of some of this has already come in. Condition Thief, for example, had a hotfix and a nerf very, very quickly after this blog post came out, and it was kind of an oppressive high burst situation. It still is, but it was already refined down, and we'll see where they go with it beyond. But check out the next post. Cal says here, let's talk about PvP balance. And just to be clear, this post we're about to read is copy-pasted onto the World vs. World forum as well. There's another version of this. It's pretty much the exact same. It just says World vs. World instead of PvP at the top. So let's talk about World vs. World balance. The two are being looked at. So, hi everyone, I just wanted to clarify something from today's blog post while also kicking off a discussion on a topic that's near and dear to most competitive players' balance. It's important to understand that as competitive handles competitive balance, we will continue to primarily use skill splits in order to minimize the impact on the rest of the game. It's certainly true that not all issues can be addressed through splits, and we will continue to work with the skills team to make sure we are making the right changes for the entire game and when splitting is not a viable option. So basically what he's trying to say here is there are some like fundamental flavor ideas or animation ideas or, you know, concepts that just feel a bit lame for competitive, and you have to do something more fundamental than just a number split in those situations. But yeah, so mini balance roadmap. Well, they've got a mini one and then a big idea. But the mini one, they say, we have identified that the overall power of the game has become an issue, and we wish to address this in the competitive game modes. So I'm going to take a break here. I wonder what they mean with this. A lot of people will interpret that to just say power creep. Power creep is the problem, and leave it there. But I actually think that's not an intelligent or smart way to go about things. It doesn't really talk or attest to any specific idea. Like, to just say power creep, what does that mean? Oh, you're sad and upset that people are getting one shot? Well, I got news for you. People were getting one shot even back at vanilla balance. People have been getting one shot in Guild Wars 2 the whole way through. There's just been significant trade-offs to builds that were able to do that left them pretty limp in any kind of more serious competitive environment or someone who knows about the threat and can evade it, right? So we can't really say that it's just damage and kill speed that's changed. Is it that you're able to get so much damage and kill speed on more sturdy builds? Well, now maybe we're talking about power creep. Are we talking about the movement in the game? Are we talking about the boon access in the game? Are we talking about the corruption and condition access in the game? Well, those are real discussions. And what does ArenaNet think has actually been creeped? What do they mean when they say we have identified that the overall power of the game has become an issue? What does that mean? So I'd like to see them talk more about this, because I think depending on how deeply someone thinks on the subject, they've got very different ideas of what this even comes across as. This seems like a platitude more than anything else to me right now. Anyway, they say the next balance update is going to be smaller than usual. We want to make a handful of very targeted changes to address the biggest pain points in the current meta. But we also want to bank some time for bigger plans moving forward. For a future balance update, we're looking at major adjustments across the board. Now, this sounds quite exciting. The goal is to re-establish what the overall power level for competitive modes should be, and then bring everything down to meet that. In true Guild Wars 2 fashion, everything's on the table. So here's the question. What is the true overall powerful level? What builds is it that people think this is where Guild Wars should be? Like, I've heard some people say, alright, current Dragon Hunter builds are pretty weak. They're not that great. But if the entire game was about at the level of Dragon Hunter, had that amount of stun break access, that amount of mobility, that amount of boon, that amount of spike potential, that amount of sustain, if that we declared the middle ground, the correct place to be, and we brought everything to about where a Dragon Hunter is, we'd be okay. But what does ArenaNet think? That's kind of the question. Well, how are they going to establish what the overall power level should be? With that said, we're not going to nerf just for the sake of nerfing. Everything should make sense. Every change should be working toward a bigger goal. The patch is still early in super early development. I don't want to go into too much detail. It's definitely something we want to talk about more moving forward. Sounds like he's very aspirational and new to it, but not much work's been done yet. As mentioned in the blog post, we want to keep the community involved and early and often when it comes to balance. So for the purpose of the discussion, consider these two future updates. First, for the short term, what outliers do you see in the current meta? Then think about the big picture. What issues do you see on a fundamental level that should be addressed? Think outside of the current meta and instead about what you want the meta to look like from a power level perspective. Keep in mind that majority of changes should be splits, but feel free to also call out issues that cannot be addressed by splits. This post is intentionally starting a broad discussion as a jumping off point into the new communication systems team, but keep in mind that the future posts are generally going to be more targeted specific issues. Yeah, I don't know how much worth they're going to get out of a broad discussion. I've browsed this Reddit thread. I've seen some of the horrendous, ridiculous, outmoded, or unbelievably just illogical things people have said, and I'm actually kind of worried that they listen to a lot of forum feedback, but hey. I want to keep this initial post fairly short. So feel free to ask questions about anything that's unclear. Otherwise, let's talk balance. But there is actually another post as well from on Halloween, October 31st, where they did give some early feedback for this mini balance. So let's run through this. We've done some work and wanted to share some of the potential changes for discussion and feedback. As a reminder, it's intended to be smaller, not address the major issues, but the big outliers right now. So what are they looking at? They're looking at Condition Thief, Holo, Condi Mirage, Rampage, Warrior's Cunning, Revisiting Star Thief. Okay, so all of these are very good, except Warrior's Cunning, which is kind of irrelevant. It's just some gimmicky nonsense that Warrior's Cunning plays into. I do think as a trait, it's like such a massive modifier, it feels like a big outlier. So fine, but it's not a major issue with the meta at the moment. All these other ones are actually important. I don't know why they care about this at all. But the other ones are genuinely big. So let's see what they've gone with. Now, immediately a great change. In all my balance feedback videos that I've been doing over the past, how long? 6 months? I've asked for this, and it has happened. Sigil of Agility has been removed from the PvP build panel. This came up as we were looking at Holo Quickness, but it's something we've been considering for a long time. Quickness in general is something that we're looking at for the future update, but in the short term, we feel this Sigil is too easily accessible for the power it provides. So this is absolutely a brilliant change I'm very happy with. First of all, I think as a broad idea of looking at quickness, I think that's really important. It should be refined down. I like the idea of quickness being this turbo modifier, but I think it should be something for specific big moments in team fights, maybe AoE granted by people who really have to tech into it with significant like utility or elite skill slots, stuff like Feel My Wrath, right, which are just completely purposeless in the game at the moment. So yeah, I think that the creep on the amount of quickness access is huge, and getting rid of agility is also really important. If you look, for example, my Scourge here, I'm running agility on my Scourge. And this is kind of outdated, obviously, the build. People don't really run this at the moment. I just logged into this almost at random with this video. But, you know, it's so that I can cheese out quick oppressive collapses and get people before they can comfortably dodge the knockdown, which isn't satisfying to receive. And it's a sigil that I think is almost unnerfable, kind of has to be removed. Like, even if they half the quickness duration to just 1 second, it's still enough to cheese out that one big animation, and that's why people use it. You know, if I put quickness on my greatsword on a warrior, I'm using it to quickly cheese out a greatsword F1, right? And that feels very satisfying. It always feels satisfying to use, but I think it is an unnerfable sigil. I think it's very good that it's been removed. Too many builds are using agility. It creates a bit more sigil diversity and puts the game into that more comfortable, decent place where it's like you have that satisfaction of dodging animations, and it's like trading resources, which is where the game felt more with vanilla in 2012, and I'm actually more in favor of. So yeah, getting rid of agility, I've been asking for ages. That's exactly what they did, so that's great. Moving on, they say Condi Thief. The main issue we're looking to address with Condi Thief is the initial burst. Long term, there are definitely questions about how this build is applying conditions. I think they mean basically on dodge effects and the well finishes and choking gas and stuff like that. But for now, we want to push it more towards a grindy build than a bursty one. So Spider Venom has had its poison duration reduced from 6 to 3, and Serpent's Touch has had its poison stacks reduced from 2 to 1. I think this is okay. I don't think it actually does that much about the burst. I'd like to see maybe the confusion on steel trait, confusion duration, drop down a bit, and maybe some of the other filler conditions that are on Thief drop down too, just so that, like, one way you can already counterplay Condi Thief is sit for a second, wait for some of the smaller conditions to drop off, and then use your cleanse, and you're going to hit the poison. But it's a bit prohibitive to do that on a lot of classes. So if the filler condition duration was dropped down just a bit more, you'd have this way of actually counterplaying some of the burst there. I think that it's right to look at the way they're applying conditions. Honestly, the most fun I have when I'm playing Condi Thief is actually interacting with Venoms. I think if they change Venoms to be shorter duration but faster cooling down kinds of utilities, where you more regularly are seeking to regroup with your allies so you get the AoE value out of it, kind of the old DP Thief, regroup with someone quickly to blinding powder them, or to give them a signet, or to give them a Bassy Venom. I miss that kind of stuff, and Condi Thief could kind of have that if it's using Venoms, so I'd rather the devs like retool it in that direction. But definitely the burst is kind of irritating. There's all kinds of fundamental weird stuff about Condi Thief, like the fact that it doesn't really have a Condi weapon of its own. So you find we're running like SD, and we're just cheesing out Sword 2, and we're cheesing out unblockable flanking or lastness strikes to apply our Condi traits, and now people have other ways of, even less ways of mitigating it. Well, that feels kind of lame, but is that a problem with Condi Thief, or is that a problem with sword stuff interacting with Condi? So, yeah, I'm not too sure on all of that. But I like to see that they are looking at a couple of nerfs here. Deadly Ambition was, of course, a big nerf as well, but already came in with a quick fix. Next, though it's still very strong. Next, they got Holo. So Holo is very strong. Holo's really fun to play, but Holo does carry way too hard. And if Holo's a perfect example of a build that people will say, oh, there's just this one little outlier. But actually, there's so many that you actually kind of need to refine a lot of stuff down. Like, you need to shave off the auto attack damage. You need to shave down the quickness duration. You need to shave down the stability. You need to shave down the stealth duration. You actually need to bring a lot of it down at once, because when you compare the difference between Holo and like a ton of other builds that in the game that just don't even have the slightest remote look in, you kind of see just how strong it is. The devs are aiming at quickness, which I think is a bit of a misfire. I know that some people think quickness is the be-all and end-all for Holo, and I did just say overall I'd like to see less quickness, but all those other things are much more important. And this is coming from someone who's played a lot of Holo, is currently top 20 on EU, finished the season in top 50 EU, all on Holo. Holo quickness has been a big point of feedback. We're planning to make some adjustments. I think just because people are saying it a lot, it doesn't necessarily make it the de facto issue. Removing Sigil of Agility was a part. I don't think it's going to be a big part, but we're looking at a minor nerf to Kinetic Battery as well. So Kinetic Battery currently gives you, like, when your leadership runes, 7 seconds of quickness. I think after their proposal here, which reduces it from 5 to 3, you're going to be at like 4.5 or something like that. I think Kinetic Battery will still be pretty strong. I don't think this actually does that much, the Kinetic Battery change. But this other one's pretty good. Leaves Elixir U. We're considering a quickness reduction here as well, but are currently leaning toward an interesting change that's worth discussion. That change being a heavy reduction on the stability that they grant. The goal of this change is to leave you as a big quickness skill, which is fair. You dedicate a whole slot to it, that's fine. But leave the door open for more counterplay. This would give the opportunity to avoid Corona Burst and then CC the Holosmith instead of just getting run over by his quickness. So Elixir U, they would reduce the stability duration from 6 to 1 second. To me, I think just the way that the skill would sit at that point, while this would be a very impactful nerf, it really would be, and a very significant nerf, I think I would actually rather see they drop the stacks of stab from 2 to 1, and then maybe the duration just a little bit, but not so much. And what that would mean is if the Holo chooses to preemptively Elixir U and Rifle 4, which so many will, he's vulnerable now because he has no more stability at all. But if he doesn't use that combo, he does still have that little bit of a cushion. I think that would be a more well-rounded approach to drop the stack count and then the duration to maybe 3 seconds or somewhere around there. Instead of just dropping 2 stab for 1 second, just feels weird. It just seems like a strange kind of thing. And I think that's a very big nerf at that point, by the way. But could it lead to some interesting gameplay against Holos now, where you're actually watching for Corona a lot more aggressively? So yeah, there you have it. That's the Holo changes, and I think it's right to be on this list, and they're good changes. Next, we've got Condi Mirage. And I completely fell in love with this post when I read this about Condi Mirage. Look at this, guys. This is so good. We understand that Mirage Cloak is a big point of contention, and we've been having discussions internally, but it isn't something we'll be ready to action for this update. I mean, I got a load of thoughts on Mirage Cloak myself, but we'll get to those later. As we get closer to our desired solution, we'll start to talk about more with you all, but in the meantime, we're looking at some more general changes, primarily toning down clone generation and reducing some damage potential of staff, pushing it more towards a utility kit. Brilliant. Which is what staff should be. Kill a lot of the damage on staff. I've been advocating for and wanted for ages. We're toning down clone duration, stopping the game looking so messy and horrendous, changing some of that completely unnecessary, ridiculous power creep with the Phantasm rework last year. Incredible. And look at what they've done. Scepter 2, reduce the number of clones spawned on block from 2 to 1 in PvP only. Brilliant change. Thank God. Why did it go up to 2? Who knows? They've gone down to 1. This is extremely good. I would propose another change for illusionary counter on Scepter 2. Once the Scepter 2 has been procced, increase the animation length, or the cast time, basically, of the counter itself. This is actually a fun, I'm going to say it, it's a fun skill for the game when you know to dodge the torment application. Oh no, I procced Scepter 2, I should dodge. Okay, cool, I've countered the counter, right? That's actually fun. It just goes a little bit too quickly in part as well because of quickness that they'll proc on themselves, say with Arcane Thievery or whatever. But if they increase the animation of the torment applicator, it's brilliant. It's actually a really good skill at that point. Reduce one of the clones and increase the torment applicator cast time. That's all you got to do so that people learn to just dodge it. Next, the Warlocks. Check it out. Staff Warlocks have been reduced from 2 to 1 back to normal. Thank God. That's fantastic. And also, they have increased the vulnerability, so it's like you still have the power of the 2 Warlocks. But now that there's only one, that means you're going to be proccing sharper images less. That means the screen's going to be less muddy. That means less shatter fuel for later. It's a brilliant nerf. This is excellent. I love this. And also the ambush, Chaos Vortex, reduce the bleed by half, reduce the burn by half, reduce the torment by half. Fantastic. Most of the time when I kill people in Connie Mirage, all I have to do is just stand still with no WASD and just use my dodges with the clones up and get the Chaos Vortex kills. Chaos Vortex is already kind of clunky in high line of sight environments, but that's not always possible in every node. This is brilliant. I love this. This is so good for Connie Mirage. Very, very, very happy. Next, they have Rampage, another stupid part of the game at the moment. My main suggestion for Rampage has always just been to increase the cooldown. I think as a broad thing, the balance team shouldn't be scared of long cooldowns. There should be skills you use that it's like, okay, it's do or die. This is the big moment. This is the big team fight. I have to use my elite in this one to swing the game and get the big snowball. And a part of the game should be your strategy of when do you actually dedicate into that resource or not. The way that the devs have been designing for years now is dropping cooldowns down because they're like, oh no, that feels bad. We want you to be able to use everything, every respawn. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't have a Rampage every engagement, all right? Let it be this big, amazing, epic thing, but have it be something people need to be precise about when they use. I don't understand why that philosophy was ever turned away from. Ever. It looks like they're still scared to turn away from it. But they have nerfed Rampage. So they say Rampage is overperforming since the initial change that's brought its cooldown to 90, continues at 120. Rather than just bumping the cooldown again, we're looking to address an underlying issue. I don't get it. Hard CC skills doing large amounts of damage. The underlying issue is people can Rampage too regularly. That is the underlying issue. You can counter a Rampage when you see it's up there. You can tech into core necros. You can spam blinds on it. You can dodge the boulder. There's fun animations to avoid there. If you try to tackle its only thing, its potency, you risk just turning people off the skill altogether. And then Warriors are in this kind of lame situation again where all their elites feel kind of mediocre. This is something we're looking to do across the board with a future update, but Rampage is a good opportunity to see the idea in action. I think they're wrong. I think they're right to look at Rampage. I think their idea here is totally flawed. But here they say kick. Basically, all the skills that aren't the auto no longer have big power coefficients. Now, I'm not sure what the base hits are on these. And a lot of the strength of these is like the gap close on the 5, followed by a stun. The boulder having the range access with the stun. The gap close on the 3, the knockback on the 2. So... and if the autos are still strong, I do think Rampage will still be a thing, okay? Or could potentially still be a thing. I think, according to their ideals, they've gone with an okay idea, just the coefficients on the things that offer utility anyway. But we'll see. I think overall, they've tackled from the wrong side of the coin on this. But I'm happy to see a Rampage change. Warriors cutting, pointless. I don't know why it's on the list of big changes. I've got no idea, but you know, it is an outlier of a trait, so fine, let's cut it down. It's just in a list. It's on a different kind of list. Reduce the damage bonus against targets at high health from 25 to 7. Oh look, now it's a normal trait. Reduce the damage against barrier people from 50 to 10. Yeah, okay, there you go. Staff Thief. This is all very necessary, I think, as well. More and more people are catching on to Staff Thief as time was going forwards. It is worded a bit interestingly. As mentioned the other day, we want to revisit the change to debilitating arc for the next balance update. So the idea here is what people would do is they'd use staff 3 and then jump, and it would mean you wouldn't get locked into an animation, but you would have the evade frames. And for very low initiative, you could basically perma evade. You could run a build that just spammed this. There are still concerns about putting it back to 4 initiative. So originally they said, let's put it to 6 initiative, but that made it as high as Volt. That was silly. They've split the difference here. That's good. They've nerfed Quick Pockets, which I think is a bit of a problem. Quick Pockets is kind of fun on, like, PP gimmick builds. And now they're even more in the dirt because of a Staff Thief change. That feels a bit lame. Staff Master, though, changing the endurance is good. And then the initiative change here, I think that's pretty good as well. So overall, some pretty decent proposals here. And I'm pretty happy with everything that they've seen. They seem to genuinely on the pulse, and they seem to understand what the game actually needs. And for an early balance, particularly oppressive stuff right now, I'm very happy with this. I really am. I think they got the big list there. They do also have one for World vs. World, where they say, in particular, we're looking at Scourge. And that's their major pain point, specifically Sand Savant, Big Shade, affecting 10 targets. It's pushed Scourge far above other options in terms of damage, while also adding its strong corrupts and solid power applications. There are other aspects of Scourge that we're looking for in another update. But in the short term, we feel that reducing the target cap back to 5 is a significant change. We want to see how the meta adjusts. So, yeah, they're dropping it back to 5 here. And they're also changing Devouring Darkness to corrupt less now in World vs. Blood. So you still AoE corrupt, but it's down to 1. So that's 10 boons into just 5 boons. If you get max value, max AoE out of it. So I don't think they're looking at this as like a full-on, you know, they hate Scourge, they want it gone forever. But they want to see what the meta becomes when it's way less oppressive. And that's rather interesting there. So there you have it, guys. That's the balance changes that they proposed. What I would say, maybe I'll do another video. This one's been long enough. I might do another video where I talk about some of my long-term thoughts, some of that, you know, widespread power reduction. What should it be on as we go forward? We'll see what their balance patch actually becomes, and that could be pretty good. So, yeah, I did want to fill you guys in on that. I think it's pretty great, and, you know, more positive-looking stuff for as Icebrood Saga goes along. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about long-term stuff with the game, and I will be back for another video very soon. Take it easy, guys.